What's up, Net Soldiers? I'm the Alliance, and welcome back to the video. Today, we're going to be doing the review for Star Wars Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi. But before we begin, I have already done reviews for Episodes 1 through 5, and I'll be bringing up some arguments from those videos, so I recommend checking those out first, then coming back and watching this video. Like I said, you don't actually have to watch those first, but I would recommend it. Also, since this is a full-depth review of this movie, I am going to be going into spoilers, so you've been warned. And if you enjoy this video and you'd like to see more, please consider helping out the channel by liking, subscribing, and turn notifications for more. So with that said, let's jump in. Star Wars The Return of the Jedi came out on May 25th, 1983. It was overall beloved by the majority of fans who felt it was a great conclusion to the trilogy. Now, just like I did for episodes 4 and 5, these are going to be the specialized editions I'm going to be reviewing. Maybe one day I'll have to go back and check out the originals, but for right now, that's a video for another day. So today we're asking the question, is Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi good? Is it bad? Is it just okay? Let's check it out. Part 1, Jabba's Palace. This film begins 1 year after Episode 5. Luke concocts a plan to save Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt, using his allies in the plan. Leia unfreezes Han, but they are discovered by Jabba. Luke soon arrives to bargain for his friend's release, but Jabba drops him through a trapdoor with the intent of letting him be eaten by a Rancor. Luckily, Luke kills the creature, however, Jabba sentences him, Han, and Chewbacca to death by Sarlacc pit. Having hidden his lightsaber inside R2-D2, Luke frees himself and battles Jabba's guards, while Leia uses the chains to strangle Jabba to death. And all our heroes escape just as Jabba's barge explodes. So the beginning of this film begins with us seeing that a new Death Star is being built and that the Emperor is coming. If you were watching these films by release order, seeing the Emperor would be a massive deal, for we only got a little bit of a glimpse of him in Episode 5. Now, down on Tatooine, I know people have picked apart Luke's plan plenty of times before in the past. However, since it makes for an entertaining experience, I'm not really going to pick at it. For as long as I'm being entertained, I personally don't mind overlooking a few things here and there. In fact, my biggest complaint about this entire part is just, what is up with these droids? Do they feel pain? Do they actually have nerves programmed? I just don't, I don't know. What's going on? I know I made this argument back in my episode 4 review, but I'm not quite sure how that works. Why are droids programmed with nerves? How does that even work? I like the Rancor fight, but I definitely feel for its owner. That dude just watched his baby get stomped by a gate. If you ask me, the Rancor handler, he should have been the bad guy of this new trilogy. Not Snoke, not Kylo. That dude could have been vicious. And that's why in Episode 7, Luke was hiding for so long, because he was tired of getting randomly attacked by Rancors. You're just hanging out in your little hovel, and all of a sudden, there's a Rancor just like outside your door, like breaking through your house. If you ask me, that's scarier than anything Snoke would do. Oh my gosh. I think it just made a better sequel trilogy than Disney. Overall, this part is really good. While I think Boba was wasted, I like the intro to the film as a whole, and the blind Han shenanigans are just fantastic. Part 2, Yoda's death. As the other heroes go to join the Rebel Alliance, Luke returns to Dagobah where he finds that Yoda is dying. Yoda confirms that Darth Vader, once known as Anakin Skywalker, is in fact Luke's father, and shortly after, Yoda becomes one with the Force. Soon, the Force ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi reveals that Leia is Luke's twin sister and tells Luke that he must face Vader again to finish his training and defeat the Empire. So this entire part serves mostly to explain the ending of Empire, as well as giving Kenobi and Yoda a reason for not looking like that big of liars. Before I look at this scene and I think to myself, how can you be such a liar, Kenobi? Like, you are a liar. But after rewatching this scene again, I now kind of understand where he's coming from. He lied to Luke about his father to keep Luke safe. For while Luke could kill the man who killed his father, Kenobi didn't know if Luke would actually be able to kill his own father. So I understand why Kenobi and Yoda kept the truth concealed from Luke, for Luke now knowing the truth somewhat throws a wrench in their plans. So while not much actually happens in this part of the film, it's mostly just an exposition dump, I think that it's exposition that was actually needed, so I'm okay with that, and I actually really do like to see, Yoda and Obi-Wan and Luke just kind of talking, so I'm okay with it. Part 3, the second Death Star. The Rebel Alliance learned that the Empire has been constructing a new Death Star under the supervision of the Emperor himself. They discover the Death Star is protected by an energy shield. Han leads a strike team to destroy the shield generator on the forest moon of Endor, and in doing so would allow a squadron of starfighters to destroy the Death Star. And Luke and Leia accompany Han and the strike team to Endor in a stolen Imperial shuttle. Upon arrival at Endor's atmosphere, Luke and Vader detect each other, however Vader allows them passage so he can turn Luke. So after landing on Endor, the squad run into some Imperial stormtroopers but manage to defeat them. However, they are soon captured by little bear creatures known as EWOKs. So one of my biggest complaints about episode 5 and 6 is that no one really seems to care about Luke in this universe. It appears as though all these rebels just kind of look at Luke Skywalker as just like another guy. You know, not the guy who destroyed the first Death Star, or not the guy who's the only Jedi on your team. He's just another guy. Now I know the novels and other forms of media around this time period show people acknowledging his prowess, but I find it lacking in these films. And this could be easily remedied by just adding 1 or 2 reaction shots of other rebels just kind of looking at Luke for a second, just pausing what they're doing and just kind of watching him in awe, and just being like, oh, that's the guy who destroyed the first Death Star. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I do think that Luke is a big deal, so I'd like to see him actually being treated as a big deal. I always like the fact that Vader knew that Luke was on that stolen ship. It really makes the villains seem extra unbeatable, which of course raises the stakes for our heroes. The speeder bike scene is looking kinda dated, however, I do like that it kinda calls back to the pod race in episode 1. How the action is constantly moving left to right, I really like that. So part 3 of this film doesn't really have much going on, but what does go on is really cool, so I think it's pretty solid.
Been spending most of our lives living in an Ewok paradise. Oh.
After an initial conflict with the Ewoks, our heroes eventually gain the trust of the Ewoks. Later, Luke tells Leia that she is his sister and Vader is their father and that he must go confront him. Leia of course doesn't want him to go, but she does understand why he has to. Soon after, Luke is brought before Vader and he tries to convince his father to return from the dark side to the light. However, Vader declines and takes Luke to see the Emperor. So part 4 of this film has so many good and so many just meh moments. What I mean by this is while there is this awesome plot being concocted by Vader and the Emperor to lure Luke to the dark side, at the same time there's a bunch of Ewok shenanigans happening. Now don't get me wrong, I love Ewoks. They just kind of feel like filler though. Like how I mentioned in my Empire review with the giant worm scenes. The Ewok scenes feel like they were placed into the movie just to kind of make it longer. So what we really want to see is Luke and Vader's A-plot. We get stuck with Ewok B-plot. And I just don't really like it. Then again, this could just be my opinion, but that's just how I feel. I also know something that a lot of fans hate is when Leia says that she remembers her birth mother, even though in episode 3 she had just been born. However, in my opinion, this never bothered me, for the Force works in mysterious ways. Plus, think about it, Anakin had premonitions of the future, so why couldn't Leia have visions of the past? Okay, now on an extremely personal note, this is just how I feel. I could be wrong, but I have to say this. The scene where Luke is talking to Leia about teaching her how to use the Force just really makes me irritated for the sequel trilogy. I mean, I'll get to those films soon, but just listening to just this little like 1-minute scene, it really kind of shows you where this franchise could have gone with the sequel trilogy. But then Disney took over and we have what we have.
My sister has it. It's you, Leia.
I know. Somehow, I've always known.
Somehow you always knew, Leia? Then why you do this? The end of this part where Luke and Vader are discussing Anakin just has so many different dynamics to it. On one hand, we know Vader is attempting to turn Luke, but on the other, we see that Luke is attempting to turn Vader. And the crazy thing is, it appears as though Luke is actually kind of winning. And I think it's a subtle thing, but it really just shows how far Luke has become, not just as a Jedi, but as a human being. Because to this point, we've seen from Yoda and Obi-Wan, they have taught him how to kill Vader, not how to turn him. So it's really cool how Luke took the training he was given, and he kind of did something different with it. So that's really cool. Part 5, the final battle. The Emperor reveals that the Death Star is operational and that the Rebel fleet will fall into a trap. On Endor, Han's team is captured by Imperial forces, but a counterattack by the Ewoks allow the rebels to infiltrate the shield generator. Meanwhile, Lando Calrissian leads the Rebel fleet in the Millennium Falcon, only to find out that the Death Star's shields are still active, and the Imperial fleet is waiting for them. The Emperor orders the firing of the massive super laser, destroying one of the rebel starships. The Emperor then tempts Luke to give into his anger, and Luke engages Vader in a lightsaber duel. Vader senses that Luke has a sister and threatens to turn her to the dark side. This of course enrages Luke, and Luke attacks and severs Vader's right hand. The Emperor tries to convince Luke to kill Vader and take his place, but Luke refuses, declaring himself a Jedi. So the Emperor, furious by Luke's decision, tortures Luke with his Force lightning. After a few moments, Vader, unwilling to let his son die, throws the Emperor to his death but is mortally electrocuted in the process. At his father's last request, Luke removes Vader's mask, and the redeemed Anakin Skywalker dies in his son's arms. After Han's strike team destroys a shield generator, Lando leads a group of rebel fighters into the Deathstar core. Lando Calrissian and Wedge Antilles destroy its main reactor. As the Falcon flies out of the Death Star and Luke escapes on a shuttle with his father's body, the station explodes. And back on Endor, Leia reveals to Han that Luke is her brother, and they kiss. Luke cremates Anakin's body on a pyre of fire, and the rebels celebrate the defeat of the Empire while Luke sees Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin watching over him. The end. So I'll begin by saying that I am ultimately okay with the fact that the Empire gets beat by Ewoks. I mean, sure, it's a little far-fetched, but there are thousands of these little guys running around. So while one person with a blaster may be able to easily dispatch a few of these little guys, if a dozen or so jump someone, they wouldn't stand a chance. And I know this movie doesn't actually show how many Ewoks there are, but you can assume there's gotta be thousands of them there. So while the Imperials have more firepower, they are severely outnumbered. So knowing these facts, I'm actually okay with them being beat by the Ewoks. In the throne room, when Palpatine is trying to coax Luke to the dark side, you can actually hear faint music that is reminiscent of the music that plays in episode 3. Now I'm not going to play the music because of copyright, but it's definitely something I recommend you listen for next time you watch. It's one of those symbolic things that the original 6 Star Wars movies did really well. As far as the rest of the throne room scenes go, I really think it was done well. Vader and Luke's conclusion is done in a way that you can really feel the tension in the scene. And I think it's nice to see Anakin after all this time. But back on Endor, I kind of have to just say this. The interaction between Han and Leia just makes me laugh. Just because you can see exactly what Han is thinking without him actually saying anything.
It's not like that at all. He's my brother.
I still wish that scene was covered up. I know people were a little annoyed when Hayden Christensen replaced the original actor at the end of the film, but I'm actually okay with this change. I know people say that Anakin should have been the age he was when he died, because that's what happened to Yoda and Obi-Wan. But for me, I don't think it really matters. I think it's one of those things like, yes, from a lore and story element, yes, he should be older. But if we're looking at it from a viewer standpoint, it makes more sense that he looks the way he did back in episode 3. But overall, while part 5 of this film isn't perfect, I think it's a very solid finale to this movie. So now we come to my conclusion of this film. While this film does actually have a few issues here and there, overall, I think it holds up really well with the rest of the original trilogy. Even if I would consider it the weakest film in the trilogy, it's still a great addition to the saga, and as a whole, it's a solid film to the original 6 films. And that's why Star Wars Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi, is a great film. But how do you feel about this film? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know in the comments below. Please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications for more videos. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.